Hello everyone. I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today I am going to tell y'all all about my experience at the Oak Lawn Public Library FanFest event. I love supporting local library events. They're a great way to immerse yourself in the community and really reach out to people who love reading. Libraries are amazing resources and they absolutely need our support. It's a symbiotic relationship between libraries and authors. It's so important to build those relationships with libraries so that you can get into that space of being there for your readers and for your fans, as well as supporting the part of the community that needs the most. It's also a great way to ingratiate yourself with the local libraries, to get the opportunity to be able to induct your books into libraries, which is basically like a feather in your cap, so to speak. It's a really great thing to put on your resume as an author, and it just really shows how much you care about the local community and how much you care about reading and literacy, because being able to access books is just an invaluable resource that everyone should have access to. Unfortunately, my camera did not videotape me doing my makeup. It's been having some errors lately, so I apologize for that, but I had this really cute cosplay for this event. I was so excited. In fact, I had a hard time trying to pick which outfit that I wanted to wear, and I ended up putting it to a vote up on my Instagram story, and y'all ended up choosing this outfit. And I have worn this outfit in the past, and I just think it's so cute and so much fun. This event was really local for me, which was surprising. It was only a short drive away, which made my day a lot easier. I still had to wake up really early, but packing the night before and then not having too far to commute to the event meant that I got a little more sleep than usual, which honestly makes all the difference. Getting ready for these events is so much work. You have to make sure that you have all of your supplies that you need, and I mean, it never fails. I always forget something going to events, and thankfully it wasn't too important what I forgot for this one. I forgot my phone charger, so I just set my phone on airplane mode whenever I didn't need to use it for a digital transaction. But in the past, I've forgotten important things, like I've forgotten my Square reader, I've forgotten my change bank, I've forgotten all sorts of important things, and it's best to just not give yourself too hard of a time about it, because once you're there, and there really isn't a whole lot you can do about it. But having some sort of checklist for yourself really helps to prevent you from forgetting things that you need for events, as well as just having everything all together in between events really helps too. I pretty much keep all of my convention stuff all packed up at all times. And a big part of that is because most of the stuff that I use for conventions, I don't really use for anything else. So there isn't really any need for me to put it away. Having it all packed up and ready to go just makes it so much easier and makes me less likely to forget something. And packing up my car the night before really also helped with this, so that I didn't have to put in the extra time to pack my car, as well as it really sucks just how sweaty you get doing these events. I know that sounds gross, but it's a reality of doing these sort of events, is that you get all sweaty loading up your car, and then you get all sweaty taking all your stuff out of your car and setting it up for load-in, and then you get all sweaty setting up your booth, and then you get all sweaty breaking down your booth, and get all sweaty doing loadout and packing your car back up, and then when you get home, taking everything out of your car and bringing it back into the house. It's just very physically exhausting thing to do these events, and it's honestly, I like to joke that it's my exercise for the week, because it's just very intensive. And if I can do that little kindness for myself and pack the car the night before, that's a little less physical effort that I have to do, and a little less sweaty I am starting off the event, which is helpful. I also always bring deodorant and perfume when I go to the event, and after I'm done setting up, I kind of spritz myself and freshen up a little bit, because nobody likes a stinky picky vendor. So, also keep that in mind when you're doing events, that it's a lot of physicality, and you want to make sure that once you're actually at the event that you're able to be fresh so that people will want to approach you. It's also a big effort for me in that I do all of this while in cosplay, and that can be kind of complicated sometimes, which is why I only do my elaborate cosplays at multi-day events where I can wear an elaborate cosplay when I'm already at the event, I'm already set up, that all of that was already taken care of the day before. I never do super elaborate cosplays for one-day events because it just doesn't make sense for me to do, and it's already so difficult doing all the load in and the load out and the everything. I don't need to make it more difficult on top of it. I did struggle a little bit with figuring out where I was supposed to park for the library event, and that's a thing that you also have to consider with doing events, is that a lot of times the area where they want you to do load in is not necessarily going to be the entrance to the building or intuitively where you think it would be. And so you also want to make sure that you give yourself some extra time to be able to locate not just the building of where the event's taking place, but also locating where the loading area is so that you know that you're in the right place, you're not going to get a ticket or get your car towed, and you're not going to have a super far walk from your car to doing all the load in work. And a little trick that I do with this is I'm almost never on time for load in. It's really hard to be on time for load in, but that actually works to my advantage that I'm always about 5 to 10 minutes late, because then that means there's typically already people there, and that makes where the load in area is a lot more visually obvious, in that if you see a lot of other people that have a lot of cars and trucks and things, and they're all loading in with tables and carts and stuff like that, that's usually a pretty good indicator if that's where you're supposed to be. Although I have had a couple of events in the past where the load-in area was really confusing and no one knew where it was, and literally everyone was in the wrong place. It was so funny. We all had to kind of repack up our cars and have a little parade over to the load-in area. So making sure that you know that you're in the right place and that you're following directions is really important, because not following procedure is a good way to not get invited back to these events. They usually have reasoning behind why they want you to load in a certain area, why they want you to go through the building a certain way to bring in all your stuff for load in. And a big part of this is the practicality of that these load-ins can cause damage, in that we have these big carts. Sometimes with the really big events, we have big trolleys. There's a lot of tables, big physical equipment, stuff like that. And that can bang on walls and bang on the elevators and things like that. So typically they want you to take a back entrance sort of place, and they typically want you to take a service elevator sort of thing. They don't want you messing up the nice stuff that the typical guests use in the kind of buildings that they use for these sort of events. And libraries are the same way, is that they don't want you to interrupt people who are actually there to use the library. So most events are not going to have you use the front entrance. They're usually going to have you use some sort of back entrance so that you're not just being a parade of people with carts and tables and stuff blocking people from being able to actually use the library for its intended purpose. I did struggle a bit with load in and load out during this particular event, just because, as I've mentioned in the past, I'm becoming more physically disabled, and I just am so busy with my day job and all the other stuff that I do that I really don't get enough sleep. So I'm usually very tired just to start off, and then the fact that I'm just becoming slowly less physically capable, so that just makes doing all of this a little bit more of a struggle than it used to be in the past. Unfortunately, Neil was not able to do this event with me, and there are going to be events like this that I'm just going to have to do myself. And as you can see, utilizing this new strategy that I have with having the smaller bins has just been such a game changer. I keep kicking myself, being like, why didn't I do this sooner? It just makes it so much easier for me, even though it is a pain that now I have 42 million boxes that I have to keep track of and load in and load out and stuff. It's so much easier for me to physically move them around, to pick them up, to carry them, all of that. It just makes such a huge difference. So that's a bit of advice that I always follow with trying to find ways to make things easier for myself, is do things that make things easier for you. Don't worry about if it's the quote unquote correct way to do something or it's the typical way to do something. Do what works best for you, because these events are just so much work. Don't invent more work for yourself. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. I've been continually learning that lesson with every event that I do. Every event, I learn more about how to make this easier for myself, how to make it more efficient, ways that I can make my booth look more professional, ways that I can make the whole packing up my car process easier, just all of that. I'm constantly learning. So a thing that I realized for this event that I want to save up for and have for the events going forward that I'm doing is I really want to get one of those magnets that you can stick on the side of your car so that I can kind of roll up being like, hey, you know, the author is here and all that. So that's a thing to watch out for. I am going to be saving up for that. I'm really excited about this idea and further branding myself and making myself more recognizable and just showing up to these events looking more professional. This event was really well run. I haven't been to an Oak Lawn public library since before the pandemic, so I don't really have anything to compare this to because I feel like all events that happened before the pandemic we can't really use as a comparison for now because events are so much more different now than they were back then. But I feel like this event was so well run. The librarians and the employees were so nice. They were so helpful. Everybody was just so awesome. And I really appreciated that they were really reasonable and flexible in that I really love this new U-shaped booth design that I've been doing with my booth. I feel like it's just so much more professional and that it gives people kind of that little respite where they can come into my booth, like physically come in and kind of get out of that traffic flow and have a quiet moment to be able to look at my books. And that proved to be so useful at this particular event because of the way that all the booths were laid out. They were just straight tables. So it was hard for some guests to interact at some tables because, y'all, this event was so busy. I was shocked at how busy this event was. Most library events in the past, like, you know, they have their ebbs and their flows. They get kind of busy. But this one, it was just busy literally the entire day. And also, it was just the volume of busy. Like, it was so busy that people struggled with stopping at booths because they just were in the way of traffic, that there were just so many people walking around the event. It was crazy. I was so impressed with that. I just think it's so awesome that so many people came out to support the library and support the event. So that was really exciting to be a part of that. I would say my only criticism about this event was that they did an activity that honestly it's a nice thought in theory, but in practice, it's just horrible for the vendors. It's basically a scavenger hunt idea where they give the guests some sort of activity that encourages them to visit every booth at the convention. And, you know, while that's a nice thought so that everybody has traffic at their booth and people coming up to them at their booth, the problem with this is that there are so many people where they're only interested in like the scavenger hunt event thing and they don't care about you or what you're offering, and they end up interrupting your sales and interrupting your genuine interactions with people, and some people can be really rude, and it's just very frustrating. And so that's a thing that if I do this event again in the future, I'm going to be better prepared for, because I was honestly really caught off guard with just how rude some of the people were doing this particular activity. So it was a scavenger hunt where every booth was given a number, and then the librarians gave every booth a stamp. So like, you know, a little rubber ink sort of stamp. And each guest had a little like bingo sheet piece of paper that had all the different booth numbers on them. And then you were supposed to find your booth number on the sheet and you did your stamp. And then once they got all the booths stamps, then they get a prize. And I honestly just felt like some sort of like invoice person, like I was just stamping invoices all day. And like there were so many people that came up to my booth who were very polite, who said hello to me, who waited very patiently for their turn, people who actually interacted with me, people who actually like would look at the books and things like that. And I really appreciated that. And that's honestly how it's best case scenario. That's how this activity is supposed to work. But unfortunately, there was also a very large number of people who were very rude, where they would literally shove past people who were interacting with me and literally throw paper in my face. And I even had one mom come up to me. She was, oh my God, she was rather awful. She didn't even look at me. She just literally tossed the papers onto the table at me and was busy talking to somebody else. And then like she got frustrated that I wasn't stamping all 5 of her papers fast enough. And she like snatched them up from me like the second that I was done. It was very rude. So that's definitely something that, you know, I would be prepared for if you're going to do an event like this. There is a possibility that they might do some sort of activity like that. Just to be prepared for that, be prepared for people to interrupt you, be prepared for people to be rude to you. It's just an unfortunate reality of events that there's always going to be people like that. There's always going to be some sort of thing like that that's going to happen. It's just the nature of it. And being emotionally prepared for that can really help you to respond to things in the best way possible, because you can't control how other people act, but you can control how you choose to react to it. And I will admit it was pretty grating by the end of the day. I was pretty emotionally tired and frustrated, but because I have encountered this at past events, I was able to kind of settle into that emotional groove of, okay, I can kind of see it coming when somebody's going to come up to my booth and be rude, as opposed to somebody that's going to come up to my booth and probably be nice, be polite, be engaging, all that kind of stuff. I was also really impressed by all of the different panels and activities that they had at this particular event. A lot of times the library events, because they're smaller, it's a public library, a lot of times they have very limited resources and limited funds for what they can do for an event. But this one, y'all, they really went all out. They had so many cool activities. Like they had a full like program that they handed out to all of us with all these different things that were going on. They had not one, but 2 costume parades, which was so cute. Just, you know, seeing the cute little parade make its way around the library. It was mostly little kids, but there were some teenagers and they all looked amazing. They had an anime parade and then they had a Star Wars parade. So it was just so cute seeing them all get to participate. And it was just so awesome seeing that they just had so much available for people to interact with. And that's a big thing that I've noticed, is that the events that typically do the best and have the best foot traffic, that have a lot of guests, are ones that have a lot of activities going on. Is that if all you have to offer is just a dealer's room and then maybe 1 or 2 activities, there's just not a lot of draw for people to want to attend the event and to be a part of it and to see what it's all about, because there isn't really a whole lot for them to do. Especially because, again, since this is a library event, it's a free event. So there are going to be a lot of people who come to the event that are not necessarily prepared to spend money. So that's also an expectation that you have to have at these kind of library events, is that a lot of people are going to walk by your booth and look at stuff and they're not necessarily going to have money to spend. Whether that's they're choosing to not spend money or it's they just literally can't afford to spend money, whatever the case, be prepared that there are going to be a high volume of people that are just not going to make a sale. So it's also best to change up your strategy for these kind of library events. Don't do the hard sell. Don't hawk at people, because it's really going to turn a lot of people off and it's going to make people less likely to stop by your booth, because it's going to make people feel bad, especially if they can't afford to buy things and they just kind of want to participate in the event and window shop and have a fun time. So kind of, you know, just rein it in a little bit. Be more focused on making connections. Be a part of the community. Get your face out there. The biggest thing at these events is that I give away a lot of business cards, and that's usually the most helpful, is because especially with people where they can't necessarily afford to make a purchase, these are people that might take a business card and maybe buy 1 book later on when they have the funds to do so. So also never underestimate the power of a future sale, and making sure that you give out your business cards, make those connections, focus more on networking and just giving your support to the library. As I tell people, different events I'll have different goals for, and those goals aren't necessarily focused around sales. I mean, at the end of the day, we all need to make money. We all have bills to pay. Of course, we want to sell our books. Of course, that's a big part of why we're there. But sometimes events are so much more than that. And that's how these library events are for me, is that the primary goal isn't necessarily to make a ton of sales, because I know I'm not going to make a ton of sales. And while at this event, I surprisingly did actually make a ton of sales. I was really pleasantly surprised with how many sales I made at this event. And a big part of that is because there was such a volume of guests at this event. It was just sheer numbers, because the majority of the people that stopped by my booth either were not able to afford to make a sale, or they just weren't there to buy things. They just weren't interested in buying any of my things or really buying anything at the event. But when you have just a large number of people, that just means that you're also going to have a larger percentage of people that are more willing to open their wallets. And that's kind of what happened here. And it was also so exciting. Another thing that was just a really big win for this event is that I'm really starting to get myself out there. My branding is starting to work, because the biggest part of being an author is success is not just in that one-time sale. That's why it's so important to network and build your community. It's in the repeated sale. You want your readers to be fans. You don't want them to just buy a book because they felt obligated or they kind of got, guilt tripped into it. You want to build that relationship where they want to keep coming back and keep buying more of your books. For them to be the readers who ask you when your next book is coming out because they want to read it. And I was so honored that that happened for me at this event, where I actually had people come up to my booth and they all of a sudden, you could see it in their eyes. They had that realization dawn on them, and they would look at me and they're like, "Oh my God, I know you. I read this book of yours." And it's so cute. They always point at it. They always point at the book. They're like, "Oh, I read Love of the Sea. Oh, I read Succumb to Darkness." Or some of them will be like, "I bought this book from you, but I haven't read it yet. I feel so bad. I'm going to go home tonight and read it. I'm so excited, da da da." But just having so many people come up and recognize me and tell me that they enjoy my books, that they're excited about my books, building that relationship is just so paramount to being an author. So that's why you need to also have those secondary goals, and not just, I need to sell, because there's just so much more to it than just making money. You're building a community, you're building your fandom, you're making those connections with your readers, and you need to make sure that you're putting just as much focus on that as you are in your strategy in order to sell as many books as possible. I'll wrap this up with that I highly recommend reaching out to your local libraries, seeing what kind of events they have going on. A lot of times they'll also do like featured author days where you can come in just you and feature your books and do readings, do signings, stuff like that. And also just see how you can be a part of your community and support your local library, because we need them absolutely more than ever. So see how you can reach out to them. They're more than happy to, have your time and have your effort. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.